Nobody expected the Houston Texans to reach this point so fast. And the crazy part is that the real story has not even started yet. You have a franchise that just watched the Seattle Seahawks and New England Patriots step through the same open path in the AFC that felt like it was sitting right there for Houston. And now, every eye turns to CJ Stroud. This season is not just another chapter for him. It feels like a verdict on whether he becomes the long-term face of a contender or the quarterback everyone remembers as almost. The twist is that the Texans are not rebuilding anymore. They are already in the fight, which means 1 year can quietly decide the direction of an entire era. For several seasons in a row, this team has crashed into the same wall in the divisional round, backed by a defense that plays at a championship level and a young core that is still growing. So the pressure hits differently now. Fans are no longer asking if CJ Stroud is promising. They are asking when he will finally own January, the way players like Sam Darnold just did on the biggest stage. And that question spills over onto everyone around him. Will Anderson Jr. has already proved he is a problem for every offense in the league. But names like Blake Fisher and Cade Stover sit in a completely different light, because this year can turn them from depth pieces into trusted pillars, or push them to the edge of the roster. Add in the possibility of a true game breaker like Breece Hall, the hidden value of a special team spark such as Brandon Codrington, and the quiet security of Davis Mills behind Stroud. And suddenly, it feels like the Texans are holding several levers that can change everything fast. That is what makes 2026 feel so dangerous and so exciting at the same time. Because this is not about hope in the distant future. It is about what happens when a serious roster either sharpens its edges or wastes them. The Texans already have DeMeco Ryans building a culture on defense that quarterbacks do not enjoy facing, and the rest of the league knows this group is only one clean offseason away from turning frustration into something a lot scarier. So before we lock in on CJ Stroud and those three Texans with the most to prove, we need to step back and see just how close this team really is, how the defense and the margins around it set the stage for everything that comes next. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Texans and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 250 likes on this video. The Houston Texans did not walk out of this past season feeling like some cute surprise story. They walked out feeling like a team that let a real shot slip away. The conference opened up in a strange way. Big name quarterbacks went down, and a path that could have belonged to Houston ended up in the hands of the New England Patriots, while the Seattle Seahawks finished the job on the other side. That is why the sting hits so hard. This is not a group that is getting blown off the field in January. It is a group that keeps stalling, right when the door finally cracks open. You can feel it in the fan base. They do not talk like people waiting for the future anymore. They talk like people who know their team is already good enough to be in the middle of the fight and just keep slipping on the same details. On defense, it already looks like a contender. DeMeco Ryans has built a unit that flies to the ball, that hits, that plays fast, and it all starts with players like Will Anderson Jr. wrecking pockets and setting a standard for everyone behind him. That side of the ball has shown up in big games again and again, which is why every small mistake on offense or special teams feels so loud. A missed protection, a turnover in scoring range, a return that flips the field against them, those moments are not just bad plays, they become the difference between flying to a championship game and going home early. The scary truth for the rest of the league is that Houston does not need some miracle transformation. They need cleaner football in those tiny pockets of time where everything seems to swing. National media sees it too, even if they will not fully admit it yet. Power rankings drop after Super Bowl 60, and the Texans sit just outside that top tier, behind brands that have already cashed in their seasons, and the message between the lines is simple. The league respects Houston, but does not fear them until the offense, in the third phase, catch up to the defense. Questions about the offensive line, the run game, and the little mistakes that kill drives keep showing up in every outside breakdown. And all of that pressure rolls back towards CJ Stroud, whether he likes it or not. Because if the roster around him keeps tightening those margins and the same wall is still there next January, nobody will be talking about how close the Texans are anymore. They will be asking what their quarterback does when everything is finally set up for him to take control. Every decision the Houston Texans make this year will sit in the shadow of one simple question. How much do they really believe in CJ Stroud? He is no longer the surprise, young passer lighting up the league with zero expectations around him. He is the face of a franchise that has already lived in the playoff picture and now has to prove it can push past it. People throw around the phrase contract year all the time, but this feels bigger. This is the kind of season that can swing the value of his next deal by more money than most players see in an entire career. If CJ Stroud turns this stretch into a run that looks like a true top-tier quarterback, the front office will have no choice but to treat him like the next massive extension in line. And if he does not, the entire way the Texans talk about their future under center quietly changes. The contract menu in front of Houston is wide open. The Texans can ride the fifth-year option. They can go down the franchise tag road, or they can jump early and lock in a top 10 level deal that puts CJ Stroud in the same financial neighborhood as names like Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, and Trevor Lawrence. Those choices do not happen in a vacuum. They come after a year where every throw, every fourth quarter, every playoff snap gets weighed against what other teams are paying their guys. When the front office looks at the tape beside contracts for players such as Tua Tagovailoa, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, and Lamar Jackson, they will not be asking if Stroud can flash talent. They already know that. They will be asking if he is the kind of player you tie your cap space to for the next half-decade. The part that almost nobody mentions out loud is that seasons like this are never just about the quarterback. They are also about what the team around him does to let him answer the question. For CJ Stroud to show the calm, dangerous version of himself that Texans fans want, in big moments, he will need cleaner pockets, a stronger run game, and fewer loose ends in front of him. That is where the pressure leaks onto the trenches, because if the protection in front of him wobbles, or the run game never scares anyone, the front office will be judging Stroud while knowing they never fully backed him up. So before this season can define his price tag and his place in the league, Houston has to face one more hard truth. The players who stand between Stroud and a free rusher might be just as important to this story as the quarterback himself. And that starts with players like Blake Fisher, who are trying to move from extra piece to trusted protector on the right side of that line. The quiet truth sitting behind all the talk about CJ Stroud is that nothing he does will look the same if the offensive line does not grow up this year. The Texans have talent at the skill spots. They have a defense that punches above its age. But the one area that still feels like a question is the group that stands right in front of the quarterback every snap. When people around the league look at Houston, they see that gap. They remember the hits, the rush throws, the stalled drives when protection got shaky, and they wonder if the front office can finally turn this unit from patchwork into strength. That is why this offseason feels like a test, not only for the players, but also for Nick Caserio, because his record in finding long-term offensive line answers is still under the microscope. You can see both sides of that record just by looking across the line. Ariante Ursary stepped in at left tackle and handled a huge job after Laramie Tunsil, giving Houston a young piece that looks like he can anchor that side for years if he keeps climbing. On the other hand, picks like Juice Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, and Kenyon Green have not yet turned into the kind of locked-in starters fans dreamed about on draft night, even if each player still has room to grow. Sitting right in the middle of all of this is Blake Fisher, a former second-round pick from Notre Dame who spent last season bouncing between duties, lining up as that extra tackle in heavy sets and coming in when injuries force changes. His snap count climbed, his grading from places like PFF sat in that solid but not dominant range, and there were moments where he looked comfortable, plus a few that stuck in everyone's memory for the wrong reasons. In a year where the Texans needed every detail to be clean, one missed block on a creative call in a playoff game became a reminder that this line is still in progress, not finished. Now, the picture in front of Blake Fisher is very simple and very intense. Veterans such as Titus Howard are still in the room. Younger names are going to arrive through the draft, and Nick Caserio has already made it clear that he plans to keep stacking bodies in the trenches until this group looks right. Fisher is not fighting to stay on the field as a spare piece anymore. He is fighting to claim the right tackle job and show that a second-round investment on him was the right bet, that he can be the kind of steady presence you trust in front of your franchise quarterback when the season is on the line. If he wins that battle and takes a leap, the entire offense feels different. If he stalls, the Texans will keep searching. And that same kind of pressure is building at another key spot on this offense, Togue, because the tight end room and Cade Stover are about to face their own brutal reality check on who this staff truly believes in. If the offensive line is the shield in front of Stroud, the tight end room is the hinge that decides how creative this offense can really be. All eyes go to wide receivers and big throws. But when the game slows down on 3rd and short or inside the 10, it often comes down to one player who can block, slip out, and become that safety valve at the exact right moment. That is where Cade Stover steps into one of the most stressful spots on this roster. He is not just another name on the depth chart. He is the former college teammate of Stroud, brought in with the idea that their connection could carry over to Sundays. And now the season in front of him will show whether that idea turns into something real or stays stuck in the planning stage. The challenge for Cade Stover is not about talent alone. It is about putting all parts of his job together at the same time. Pieces of his game have flashed: soft hands, toughness over the middle, comfort working with Stroud, but injuries and uneven blocking have kept him from grabbing that trusted role full time. Inside the building, the staff still believes in Brevin Jordan, who has fought through his own injury problems, yet keeps earning new deals, and praise for what he shows in practice and in healthy stretches. Dalton Schultz brings steady veteran production, but he is also in a spot where every year feels like a fresh decision on his future. That creates a tight competition in a small room, and there is no hiding in that kind of battle. For Cade Stover, this year is about proving he can hold up as an inline blocker on rundowns, protect when the protection slides his way, and still be the guy who finds space when Stroud needs a quick answer. If he does that, the entire offense changes shape. A trusted tight end who can stay on the field in every situation lets the coordinator disguise looks, keep the same personnel on the field, and force defenses to guess wrong over and over again. If he does not, the Texans will keep rotating bodies and searching for someone who can give them that full package at the position, which makes life harder for the quarterback and for the line that is trying to find rhythm. And that is where the pressure stretches beyond just the passing game, because even a perfect tight end cannot fix one glaring problem that kept showing up last season: the lack of a truly terrifying running threat in the backfield. That is why the next question for this front office is so heavy. Will they swing at a name like Breece Hall and finally give this offense the kind of ground weapon that turns every snap into a problem for the defense? If the Houston Texans really want to scare the league in 2026, there's one name that instantly changes how every defensive coordinator sleeps at night: Breece Hall. For the past few years, he has been buried inside a broken New York Jets offense, yet he's still stacked up over 1,000 rushing yards at around 4.5 yards a carry, with hundreds of receiving yards on top of that production. All while defenses knew the ball was coming his way. That is what a real feature back looks like: someone who can turn a basic handoff into a chunk gain and a simple check down into a first down. Now picture that same player stepping into an offense that already has Stroud, a strong receiver group, and a defense that keeps handing the ball back with good field position. The idea alone feels like the kind of move that tells the entire league Houston is not just trying to compete. They are pushing their chips into the middle of the table. Right now, the Texans' backfield feels more like a puzzle than a hammer. Woody Marks flashed as a tough runner with enough burst to handle real volume. Nick Chubb brought veteran power when healthy. Dare Ogunbowale gave passing game value. And Jawhard Jordan showed he can pop a long run in the right moment. Each of them does something useful, but defenses are not changing their entire game plan around any one of those names. That is the problem. Last season, you could feel safety sitting a little deeper, corners sitting on routes, linebackers not truly fearing that one cut and gone type of run that tilts the field. A back like Breece Hall forces everything to bend. Boxes get heavier. Play action suddenly becomes real again, and those same linemen who have been grinding in tight spaces finally get to see defenders on their heels, instead of leaning forward at the snap. The ripple effect touches every part of this offense. Give CJ Stroud a runner who can rip off explosive gains and heavy yards after contact, and suddenly second down feels shorter, third down feels lighter. And coordinators like seeing names such as Ariante Ursary and Blake Fisher firing off the ball instead of just bailing in pass protection all night. It would help D'Amico Ryans too, because long, patient drives with a real ground threat keep his defense fresh for the moments that matter most. A signing like that is more than just adding talent. It is a signal that the Texans are done flirting with their window and ready to go all in on it. But even if Houston lands a star in the backfield, there is one more piece of the puzzle that decides tight playoff games. The hidden yards on special teams, where players like Brandon Codrington can quietly swing an entire season without ever touching the ball on offense or defense. The Texans know their season can swing on plays that do not come from CJ Stroud at all, which is why a move like adding return ace Brandon Codrington matters more than it looks. If he keeps stealing hidden yards on kicks and punts, stars like Tank Dell and Jalen Noel can focus on offense, while the defense and line start drives in better spots. That kind of special teams edge is often the thin line between going home in January and still playing the next week. On top of that, keeping Davis Mills, while other teams are hunting for quarterbacks, shows this front office is all in on winning in 2026 and refuses to gamble with depth at the most important position. Around the league, teams are begging for solid quarterback play. So the Texans keeping Davis Mills behind CJ Stroud instead of trading him shows they are serious about protecting this window, not gambling it on a cheap backup. That choice fits the rest of the roster build, adding competition on the line, chasing more juice with names like Breece Hall, trusting Ariante Ursary, pushing Blake Fisher, and challenging Cade Stover to grow. It all circles back to three players with the most on the line in 2026, CJ Stroud, proving he is a true top-tier starter, Blake Fisher locking in as a real right tackle, and Cade Stover becoming a complete tight end. If they hit, the season looks like the start of a long run. If they do not, people will remember it as the year Houston had everything lined up and could not finish.